nurseries who say babies or dogs. Babies or dogs. And this slogan has finally conditioned the medical thinking of our whole nations, of yours and mine. The medical existence collected ridicules this slogan. I can't certainly, in this brief time that is given to me to speak, refute all the mass of scientific lies that have been propagated through the media and through the medical journals and the daily press. I can only briefly touch on three main subjects, on the three big battle horses of our adversaries. Let me touch on them briefly. Surgical techniques. The great British surgeon Lawson Tate, who at the end of the last century developed practically all the surgical techniques still in use today, worked years on animals in the beginning of his career. He gave up his experiments on animals, his exercises on animals. He became a declared enemy of animal experimentation. He published books, scientific papers, and letters to the editor in Great Britain stating that animal experiments had misled him for years, that he had to unlearn everything he had learned from the animals before he could operate on people. And that one of the most famous operations that are done to him, the Lawson Tate operation, was retarded by 12 years because of his use of animals. Now, mind you, Lawson Tate is not the only one who says that. And if you know that dogs, for instance, who are the main surgical experimental animals, that dogs react differently. Their skin, their tendons, their veins react in a different way. Surgeons working on dogs need other instruments, a different instrumentation. The veins, the nerves are placed differently. The bones are in a different place. You must really say one must be mad to say that a surgeon has to exercise on dog before he can operate. None of you would go to a veterinarian if you needed your appendix taken out or your gallbladder. You know that. Then, how does one? Then that's the question that's being fired back at me. Then how does one train a surgeon? Well, the way all surgeons are trained. A surgeon first learns where the nerves in the human body are placed by cutting up cadavers who can't kick back. After that, when he knows where all these things are, he starts the practical knowledge, not by operating on human beings, and much less by operating on dogs, but by assisting a surgeon. And after he has assisted a surgeon dozens of times, hundreds of times, in a great many different operations, and knows what's going on, he starts operating himself, and the master surgeon shows him, warns him from any mistake he might commit. And this, my surgeon friends have told me, is the only way a surgeon can be trained. And if anybody can prove to me that there are other ways, well, I'd like to know, because the surgeons don't know other ways. Now, we come to number two. All drugs must be tested on animals. Yesterday, my friend Burgos told me a very good case. Now, let's assume you were a horse breeder, and let's assume suddenly all your horses took sick, and some started to die, and the others just laid down in misery. And let's assume a healer came in and said, listen you, I can cure your horses. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to transmit this horse sickness to human beings, and I'm going to find a cure for your horses. Wait, you would think that this man was either an idiot or a crook. And exactly this is being done in medical research on drugs today. Now, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, the Food and Drug Administration announced that 100, what am I saying? I can't believe it myself, that 1.5 million Americans were hospitalized because of unexpected side effects of drugs. We don't know how many tens of thousands were hospitalized, even died of them, I mean. Ivan Illich once set the number of people dying in American hospitals at 140,000 a year from drugs. Some other years there are only 40,000. Okay. I can tell you that all those drugs, without any exception, had been safety tested on animals, because there is a so-called Delaney Amendment which obliges the testing of drugs on animals before they are released to the public. And since that Delaney Amendment was passed under the pressure of the drug industry that needed an alibi and of the international animal breeders, since then the damages from drugs have been rising very rapidly. I was in a Swiss laboratory in one of our giants in Basel, and I spoke to the head researcher there, who didn't know what kind of book I was preparing. He thought I was going to glamorize our Swiss drug industry. And I asked him, how about animal experiments? What do you believe? And he told me definitely that he did not believe in animal experiments, that they were only misleading. He even gave me examples. And I asked him, why do you do them? And he said, because we are a multinational and we must show our protocols to the foreign regulatory agencies. He didn't say it, but I do know that he meant America, because only America has this Delaney Amendment. We in Switzerland have no obligation to test drugs on animals, but they do it anyway, just to be covered by this animal alibi. Now, again, about 4 or 5 years ago, the World Health Organization announced that 240 drugs are sufficient for world requirements. 2 years ago, the UNIDO, that is United Nations Industrial Development Organization, part of the World Health Organization, has announced that only 24 drugs are indispensable, and that tallies with the number of drugs that President Allende of Chile announced 10 years ago, shortly before he and most of the doctors on his medical committee were killed in the revolution, organized, as you know, by the CIA. And well, 24 drugs. So we don't want to hear people asking us, how are we going to develop new drugs, since 205,000 drugs and combinations have already been developed, and most of them have been withdrawn. Now, of those 24 drugs, the UNIDO announced that only 9 are even more indispensable than the others. And which drug topped the list of these 9 indispensable? Our good old standby aspirin, which has not been found through animal experimentation, because most animals die from aspirin.